Hey everyone, welcome to Tuesday night live horror readings, and this is actually episode 2. So it's still an experiment. We'll see how you guys like it. If you are watching live, let me know if you can see me and hear me. Okay? Sorry about that. Had to put a starburst in my mouth, which I won't do while I'm reading. Hey, Alan. So I'll wait a minute for a few others to show up, but did you guys like last week's episode? I think The Night Wire is such a great story. Okay, lesson learned. Do not be chewing a starburst when I go live. All right, now that that's taken care of, we'll see what we can do from there. So, if you want, and if more people show up, we can do another small discussion afterwards. But I'm very interested in any future stories that you guys would like me to read. As I mentioned before, and if you're watching this for the first time, of course you can go to any number of places online, including YouTube, and you can listen to someone narrate a story, whether it's in the public domain or not. And some of them are good, some of them are great, and some of them are not so great. But what I don't think any of them are live readings of the story. And I say this on Thursday nights as well. There's just something about live, everyone seeing it and discussing it at the same time that uh, just adds that extra dimension, that community feeling. So looks like I got a couple people watching, which isn't as high as Thursday nights, but I want to give them just a few more minutes. Or maybe I didn't plug it enough. Or maybe it's going to take a few weeks to get going on this. Like I said, this is an experiment. I Thanks, Vince. Yeah, I think the you're a nerd too. I think the Thursday night episodes are pretty much established that they're a successful experiment. So, see, it's good that I waited a few minutes because now we have some more people in here. Um, what's the fourth of the week, Alan? Anyway, there is I'm sticking to public domain just for now. Oh yeah, Thursday's July 4th, so we'll see if I actually get anybody. Because here's the thing. My wife and my son are out of town for almost the entire month of July. So am I doing anything on the 4th of July? I am not. Um, so I will be doing the Thursday night thing unless something else comes up. This is a this is a pretty cool little town. I know that they're doing all kinds of festivals and so forth, and I can walk to downtown from here. So there's always that possibility that I skip this Thursday and do next Thursday. But you know what? We'll see. Yep. Party at the Davis house. Not so much. I like it quiet. Anyway, anyone out there listening who has a book that they would like me to read a passage from, or a short story that they would like me to consider reading, please feel free to email me, lovecraftezine@gmail.com, lovecraftezine @gmail.com. So I remember the first time that I don't remember the first time that I read The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. I was probably pretty little, 7 or 8. Time travel's always fascinated me. I do remember the first time I watched The Time Machine from the 60s. What was it, 1964? My father had checked it out on VHS when I must have been about 11, so this was about 1982. And I was so excited about it that I got up early, I got all my school clothes on, and I went down in the basement where the VHS and the TV was, and watched the film, and loved it. And my father was not happy with me, but that's another story. Anyway, the chapter that fascinates me the most these days as an adult is when the time traveler returns to the future and he misses the mark a bit. And this is a really, really good chapter. You don't really have to know anything about the rest of the book to enjoy this chapter. Uh, yeah, there's a really great video on YouTube, and I actually linked to it in the show notes. And it's called Time Lapse of the Future. And I recommend that everybody watch it. Um, it's just an amazing glimpse into what the future of our universe is going to be like. And the universe has been around not quite 14 billion years. It's been around about 14.8 billion years. But the thing is, in terms of the life of the universe, it's in its infancy. It's barely out of the womb. In fact, it's probably in the womb. And the other thing I got from this video, I've seen it several times, is that for the vast majority of all of those trillions and trillions and trillions of years that are ahead of us, for the vast majority, unless some civilization is out there that can live through this, there will be no life anywhere in the universe. It'll just be this giant machine with no one to observe it. And this is by terms, when you watch this video, by turns, it's fascinating, it's horrifying, it's frightening. It's really the essence of cosmic horror. And so if you get time after tonight, after you listen to me talk and read this chapter, if you get time, check out that video. Like I said, I've got the link in the show notes, and I can't remember, 15 or 20 minutes, and it's really worth your time. Really puts things into perspective. And H.G. Wells, back in the 90s when he wrote The Time Machine, did a really good job portraying the future of Earth. He uh, he measured the demise of the sun in millions of years instead of billions, if memory serves. But we'll forgive him for that. The whole idea is pretty much the same. So that's what I would like to read to you. So right before this chapter begins, the unnamed time traveler escapes the Morlocks by jumping on the time machine, and he pushes the lever to go into the future. So There's your setup. Excuse me. All right, so chapter 11. I have already told you of the sickness and confusion that comes with time traveling. And this time I was not seated properly in the saddle, but sideways and in an unstable fashion. For an indefinite time I clung to the machine as it swayed and vibrated, quite unheeding how I went. And when I brought myself to look at the dials again, I was amazed to find out where I had arrived. One dial records days and another thousands of days, another millions of days, and another thousands of millions. Now, instead of reversing the levers, I had pulled them over so as to go forward with them. And when I came to look at these indicators, I found that the thousands hand was sweeping round as fast as the seconds hands on a watch into futurity, into the future. As I drove on, a peculiar change crept over the appearance of things. The palpitating grayness grew darker. Though I was still traveling with prodigious velocity, the blinking succession of day and night, which was usually indicative of a slower pace, returned and grew more and more marked. This puzzled me very much at first. The alterations of day and night grew slower and slower, and so did the passage of the sun through the sky, until they seemed to stretch through centuries. At last, a steady twilight brooded over the earth, a twilight only broken now and then when a comet glared across the darkling sky. The band of light that had indicated the sun had long since disappeared, for the sun had ceased to set. It simply rose and fell in the west, and grew ever broader and more red. All trace of the moon had vanished. The circling of the stars, growing slower and slower, had given place to creeping points of light. At last, some time before I stopped, the sun, red and very large, halted motionless upon the horizon, a vast dome, glowering with a dull heat, and now and then suffering a momentary extinction. At one time it had for a little while glowed more brilliantly again, but it speedily reverted to its sullen red heat. I perceived by this slowing down of its rising and setting that the work of the tidal drag was done. The earth had come to rest with one face to the sun, even as in our own time the moon faces the earth. Very cautiously, for I remembered my former headlong fall, I began to reverse my motion. Slower and slower went the circling hands until the thousands one seemed motionless, and the daily one was no longer a mere mist upon its scale. Still slower until the dim outlines of a desolate beach grew visible. I stopped very gently and sat upon the time machine looking around. The sky was no longer blue. Northeastward, it was inky black, and out of the blackness shone brightly and steadily the pale white stars. Overhead, it was a deep Indian red and starless, and southeastward it grew brighter to a glowing scarlet where, cut by the horizon, lay the huge hole of the sun, red and motionless. The rocks about me were of a hard reddish color, and all the trace of life that I could see at first was the intensely green vegetation that covered every projecting point on their southeastern face. It was the same rich green that one sees on forest moss or on the lichen in caves, plants which, like these, grow in a perpetual twilight. Excuse me. If I was narrating a book, that's where I would have paused for a second. The machine was standing on a sloping beach. The sea stretched away to the southwest to rise into a sharp, bright horizon against the wan sky. There were no breakers and no waves, for not a breath of wind was stirring. Only a slightly oily swell rose and fell, like a gentle breathing, and showed that the eternal sea was still moving and living. And along the margin where the water sometimes broke was the thick incrustation of salt, pink under the lurid sky. There was a sense of oppression in my head, and I noticed that I was breathing very fast. The sensation reminded me of my only experience of mountaineering, and from that I judged the air to be more rarefied than it is now. Far away up the desolate slope, I heard a harsh scream, and I saw a thing like a huge white butterfly go slanting and fluttering up into the sky, and circling, disappear over some low hillocks beyond. The sound of its voice was so dismal that I shivered, and I seated myself more firmly upon the machine. Looking round me again, I saw that, quite near, what I had taken to be a reddish mass of rock was moving slowly toward me. Then I saw the thing was really a monstrous crab-like creature. Can you imagine a crab as large as yonder table, with its many legs moving slowly and uncertainly, its big claws swaying, its long antennae like carter's whips, feeling and waving, and its stalked eyes gleaming at you on either side of its metallic front? Its back was corrugated and ornamented with ungainly bosses, and greenish incrustation blotched it here and there. I could see the many palps of its complicated mouth flickering and feeling as it moved. As I stared at this sinister apparition crawling towards me, I felt a tickling on my cheek, as though a fly had lighted there. I tried to brush it away with my hand, but in a moment it returned, and almost immediately came another by my ear. I struck at this and caught something thread-like. It was drawn swiftly out of my hand, and with a frightful qualm I turned, and I saw that I had grasped the antenna of another monster crab that stood just behind me. Its evil eyes were wriggling on their stalks. Its mouth was all alive with appetite, and its vast, ungainly claws, smeared with an algae slime, were descending upon me. In a moment my hand was on the lever, and I had placed a month between myself and these monsters. But I was still on the same beach, and I saw them distinctly now as soon as I stopped. Dozens of them seemed to be crawling here and there in the somber light among the foliated sheets of intense green. To me, this is very cosmic horror. I cannot convey the sense of abominable desolation that hung over the world. The red eastern sky, the northward blackness, the salt Dead Sea, the stony beach crawling with these foul, slow-stirring monsters, the uniform poisonous-looking green of the lichenous plants, the thin air that hurts one's lungs, all contributed to an appalling effect. I moved on 100 years, and there was the same red sun, a little larger, a little duller, the same dying sea, the same chill air, and the same crowd of earthly crustacea creeping in and out of the green weed and the red rocks. And in the westward sky I saw a curved pale line, like a vast new moon. So I traveled, stopping ever and again, in great strides of 1,000 years or more, drawn on by the mystery of the earth's fate, watching with a strange fascination the sun grow larger and duller in the westward sky, and the life of the old earth, ebb away. At last, more than 30 million years hence, the huge red-hot dome of the sun had come to obscure nearly a tenth of the darkling heavens. Then I stopped once more, for the crawling multitude of crabs had disappeared, and the red beach, save for its livid green liverworts and lichens, seemed lifeless. And now it was flecked with white. A bitter cold assailed me. Rare white flakes ever and again came eddying down. To the northeastward, the glare of snow lay under the starlight of the sable sky, and I could see an undulating crest of hillocks, pinkish white. There were fringes of ice along the sea margin, with drifting masses further out, but the main expanse of that salt ocean, all bloody under the eternal sunset, was still unfrozen. I looked around me to see if there were any traces of animal life remained. A certain indefinable apprehension still kept me in the saddle of my machine, but I saw nothing moving, in earth or sky or sea. The green slime on the rocks alone testified that life was not extinct. A shallow sandbank had appeared in the sea, and the water had receded from the beach. I fancied I saw some black object flopping about on this bank, but it became motionless as I looked at it, and I judged that my eye had been deceived and that the black object was merely a rock. The stars in the sky were intensely bright and seemed to me to twinkle very little. Suddenly, I noticed that the circular westward outline of the sun had changed, that a concavity, a bay, had appeared in the curve. I saw this grow larger. For a minute, perhaps, I stared aghast at this blackness that was creeping over the day. And then I realized that an eclipse was beginning. Either the moon or the planet Mercury was passing across the sun's disk. Naturally, at first I took it to be the moon, but there is much to incline me to believe that what I really saw was the transit of an inner planet passing very near to the Earth. The darkness grew apace. A cold wind began to blow in freshening gusts from the east, and the showering white flakes in the air increased in number. From the edge of the sea came a ripple and a whisper. Beyond these lifeless sounds, the world was silent. Silent? It would be hard to convey the stillness of it. All the sounds of man, the bleating of sheep, the cries of birds, the hum of insects, the stir that makes the background of our lives, all of that was over. As the darkness thickened, the editing flakes grew more abundant, dancing before my eyes, and the air, cold of the air, was more intense. At last, one by one, swiftly, one after the other, the white peaks of the distant hills vanished into blackness. The breeze rose to a moaning wind. I saw the black central shadow of the eclipse sweeping toward me. In another moment, the pale stars alone were visible. All else was rayless obscurity. The sky was absolutely black. A horror of this great darkness came on me. The cold that smote to my marrow and the pain I felt in breathing overcame me. I shivered, and a deadly nausea seized me. Then, like a red-hot bow in the sky, appeared the edge of the sun. I got off the machine to recover myself. I felt giddy and incapable of facing the return journey. As I stood sick and confused, I saw again the moving thing upon the shoal. There was no mistake now that it was a moving thing against the red water of the sea. It was a round thing, the size of a football perhaps, or it may be bigger, and tentacles trailed down from it. It seemed black against the weltering blood-red water, and it was hopping fitfully about. Then I felt I was fainting, but a terrible dread of lying helpless in that remote and awful twilight sustained me while I clambered upon the saddle. A little bit into the next chapter. So I came back. For a long time I must have been insensible upon the machine. The blinking succession of the days and nights resumed, and the sun got golden again. The sky blue. I breathed with greater freedom. The fluctuating contours of the land ebbed and flowed. The hands spun backward upon the dials. And at last I saw again the dim shadows of houses, the evidences of decadent humanity. These too changed and passed, and others came. Presently, when the million dial was at zero, I slackened speed. I began to recognize our own petty and familiar architecture. The thousand's hand ran back to the starting point. The day and night flapped slower and slower. Then the old walls of my laboratory came around me. Very gently now, I slowed the mechanism down. And that's it for tonight. Although, I do know what I'm going to read for next Tuesday night, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. So, hey, let me know. What did you think of that? Thanks, Mark. Um, yeah, I can't say enough about that video that I've linked to. It, I mean, I hope I did the story justice. Obviously, H.G. Wells is a great writer. I mean, a few dates wrong, but who cares? That's just nitpicking. Um, the way that the time lapse of the future, a journey to the end of time YouTube video starts off is what does our future hold? How will the universe meet its end? We may never be truly certain, but basically science has a pretty damn good idea. Let's take a journey to the end of time. We will travel through time exponentially, doubling our speed every 5 seconds. The vision of the future will surely evolve as we probe for more clues. But one thing is clear: the universe has only just begun. Think about that for a second. The Earth has been around for, what, 4.5 billion years. So a little less than the third of the age of the universe. I mean, the universe was around for, I don't know, 8 or 9 billion years before the Earth, before our solar system, and in all that time, as you'll see from this time lapse video, it's the universe has barely begun. And we talk about comparing the lives of not just humans, but the human race itself. Not just the last 10,000 years, but the last, I don't know, 100,000 years ever since we gained self-consciousness. I don't remember when that was, 60, 70,000 years ago. But as long as Homo sapiens has been around, as long as our ancestors have been around, I mean, let's call it 100,000 years, since I don't have it in front of me. That's compared to the age of the Earth in a 24-hour day. That's like the last, I think, 60 seconds. If you start at midnight when the Earth formed and ended at now, then our race basically came into being at 11:59 p.m. And that's just the Earth. That's not any comparable size to the universe. And when you take the current age of the universe and you say, hey, that's that's not even 1%. That's not 10%. That's not 5%. That's not 1% of how long the universe will last. It's it's nothing. The universe has just begun. And I think the thing that hit me hard, a lot of things hit you hard in that video, but I think the thing that hit me hardest is finally when all motion ceases in the universe. And it talks about there's an age of black holes that come, and all this. Um, it really walks you through it. It's so fascinating. But there's a point coming in the incredibly far future, um, where motion ceases. Nothing's orbiting anything anymore. In other words, there's no all concept of time ceases, even if there was someone there to observe it. If nothing's moving and nothing ever moves and nothing ever will move, essentially time is finished. It's done with. So, one of my favorite poets, Frost, wanted to know if the world will end in fire or in ice. Most likely ice. So yeah, it's incredible. Um, yeah, the heat death of the universe. Oh, thank you. Fault Ferngoth says, with that chapter, I better understood why this was my dad's favorite novel. Thanks. Oh man, thank you. That means a lot to me. Yeah, that chapter in the novel hit me harder than the rest of the novel, which is great. But I don't think they really touch on it in the movie. I can't remember the '60s movie. I think he just gets the hell out of the way of the Morlocks, but I can't remember for sure. I guess after 40 years, I'm due for a rewatch, right? So, um, anything else you guys want to say that are live chatting with me about it? Um, all right, for the fourth time, I will say, please watch the video I have linked in the show notes, the time lapse of the future, a journey to the end of time, and it's got millions of views, and for a good reason. It's very well done. It's very well researched, and more or less, this is what's going to happen. Um, if a person is religious, then it makes me think of Supernatural when Dean meets Death for the first time, and Death says something to the effect of he and God have been around for so long that neither one of them can remember who came first. But then he says something to the effect of, at some point, he will reap God. He will, he's a reaper, so he will reap God. And Dean's like, I think this is above my pay grade. And Death is like, yeah, just a bit. So anyway, do I prefer Vern or Wells? I, you know, I don't know. It's kind of, I think it's kind of apples and oranges. So I don't really have a preference. So, so yeah. Anything else, guys? Felt like it was kind of short, but I guess we ate up about 45 minutes here, didn't we? Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to talk about, as usual, quite a few things, but one of the things I'm going to talk about is the brand new movie that's supposed to be, I guess, very avant-garde and very great, called I Saw the TV Glow. And it's really expensive to rent right now, and I have really good fans and patrons, and I mentioned it to somebody, and they're like, "Here you go, rent it." And so now I owe it to talk, owe it to everybody to talk about that. So they didn't want their name mentioned, but thank you very much to the person who sent me $100 gift certificate for Oreo's expensive food. You rock. You and your husband rock, and your cat rock. So thank you so much. Um, I know it was your cat's idea, but thank you for writing the check. I'm kidding. No, I really appreciate it. And so I'm going to talk about, on Thursday, I'll talk about I Saw the TV Glow, and I'm going to talk about the movie Smile. And then there's one movie I want to talk about that I haven't seen, but I'm going to see. I think it's on Hulu. That looks really, really good, and it's called Quiet. Um, I don't know. It's about. I'm googling. Bear with me. It's called Somewhere Quiet, and it's on Hulu, and it looks really good. So there we got three movies. I Saw the TV Glow, um, somewhere quiet, and smile. And I don't even have to pay for somewhere quiet. And I don't think I have to pay for smile either. I think it's free to watch. So, so yeah, yay or nay on the TV glow. I can't yet, Alan, because I am 2/3 of the way through it, and it's very different, and it all will be worth it if it comes together in a satisfying way. If it doesn't, and it's just different for the sake of being different, and it's a big case of the emperor has no clothes, then I'll say that too. But I mean, I'll probably have it watched by tomorrow if you want to send me a message, and I can let you know. So, but certainly by Thursday night. All right, guys. Again, if there's anything that you want me to read in the future, please send me an email or comment below uh, once the video is up and not live anymore, because commenting and clicking like and all that is one of the best things that you can do for the algorithm. And tell your friends. Say, hey, Mike Davis is doing this really cool thing where he reads on Friday night. And apparently everyone's been telling me for a couple years now that I have a great reading voice, which honestly, it's been in the last year and a half that I understood this. I thought I just had a regular voice like everybody else. And people keep stopping me and telling me that. So it's kind of like the color of your hair, right? You can't brag about it. It just happened to you, but I'm grateful for it. So, although as a kid, I did do exercises to keep getting my voice deeper. I did do that. So I don't know. Maybe it worked. So we've all got our little thing, right? Listen, I really appreciate you guys. Really appreciate you guys watching. I'm glad you enjoyed the chapter. Uh, I've been wanting to read this particular chapter to other people for quite a long time now, and so I'm glad I have the opportunity. So anyway, you guys enjoy the rest of your week until Thursday night. If you're not a Patreon, hey, please, please, please consider it. Speaking of audio, I just gave the Patreons um, at the $10 and up level a almost 3 hour John Langan um, novella, and it's one of the best novellas I've ever read, seriously. Read by John Paget, author of Secret of Ventriloquism. And so thanks to John Paget and thanks to John Langan for gifting that to the Patreons for me. So anyway, guys, good night, and hey, goodbye and hello as always.